Yes, sir.
Hey, I just want to invite everybody and welcome everybody to the January 23rd, 2023 Idaho Springs work session. And Sally, please feel free if you have questions about this. The first item up is affordable housing site options. And with us tonight is Kathleen O'Leary to discuss some of the options. I know there have been a lot of questions about some of these sites here in the city. I really think without exception, the city's never got so much as a red center use out of these sites that have been put out there. And Kathleen had drove around with us before winter hit, and we looked at some of these, and some of these are real possibilities, not for anything giant, but there's definitely some opportunity for some affordable housing here on property that the city owns, has never done a thing with.
So, Mayor, if I may, I'll kick it off.
Thank you, Jared.
Kathleen here as well to answer any questions or to hear the discussion this evening. But I'll go through the staff reports a little bit. We did look at a number of locations throughout the city, most of them that are currently owned by the city in some capacity. And we looked at those for feasibility of trying to take little nodes and build some affordable workforce housing where, hopefully where we can squeeze it in locations. So we looked at about 7 sites at the beginning. We do have a couple of other sites that to look into further. However, they're a little bit more challenging. These are kind of the low-hanging fruit ones that we wanted to take a look at first. So I'm going to go through this list. I'll talk a little bit about the pros and cons to the sites. I've included a number of graphics in here to hopefully make it a little easier to understand exactly where they're at. And then I'm happy to take any questions. The city council's thoughts as to how to move forward. If we want to go full bore on a few sites or whatnot, I'll be happy to hear that input. The first site though that I want to talk about is 3300 block of Riverside Drive. And I call it kind of the Northwest because there's actually 3 sites in that basic area. That site, I did take a picture of it, and there's kind of on the second page, there's a bit of another image that has a green box around it. We're really trying to look at, there's a parking lot right now in between some of the townhomes and some other linear parking there. And if we reformatted some of that existing parking and then looked at potentially building a site to the northwest of that parking, we could potentially fit a few units in there. Now, of course, this is all, Jared feasibility, not 100% architect feasibility. So I do want to make that known that this is a very preliminary item. Some of the constraints on this site is that there's the high tension power lines up above. That actually has an 80-foot wide easement that we have to stay out of. So on this image here, you can kind of see these diagonal lines coming through. That's that 80-foot easement. So we could put some parking under there as it is today, but to actually build a location outside of that, that's where our pad would have to be. So this site, for the most part, we can meet a lot of setbacks, etc. It is zoned park currently because it was designated as kind of a park site for that community. I have not been able to find anything in the plat or anything that restricts that park site past just what the plat says. So there could be some extra digging into that needs to be done as well. But if there's no other documentation that restricts the park site, we could look at parceling a portion of it off, rezoning it. I propose rezoning it to R2 just because that's what we have around it. And R2 allows for duplexes and townhomes. So there might be enough space. And once again, these are Jared numbers. there might be enough space for, 3 to 5, probably more in the realm of 3 to 4, like townhome units there. It's,
That would be rented or would it be sold?
yeah, so we've been working with Habitat for Humanity and correct me if I'm wrong, Kathleen, but typically the model is that they would be sold.
They would be sold, it's homeownership, yeah, awesome.
And it's deed restricted, income restricted, so.
Yeah.
It's gotta be folks that,
For the life of the mortgage? or
Well,
life
that's
of the-
what we'd have to talk about, because there was some talk about doing a land lease underneath, that the city would still own the land, and so it would be for like 91 years or something like that.
Why would we want to do that?
What it would do is, it's, the analogy that's most often used is you wouldn't build city hall and then sell the land out of it in 20 years. Like you want to maintain that land forever because it's a city property. And the same thing is done in affordable housing in a lot of places in Denver now. There's a place called Elevation Land Trust, which is most kind of the biggest one I'd say right now that does this, but there's a bunch of different people who do this. And basically what you can do is you can structure deals on a lease like that, where the ownership of the land would remain either owned by the city or a different, like whatever the owner is. And then when you set up a land lease like that, you can do a 90-year option with a 90-year option to renew. It's 99 actually. And what that does is allows the land or the improvements on the land to depreciate so that they can still have value and you can capitalize them and all that kind of thing. So from a home ownership perspective, it's really not that different because everything works the same. But when it's time to build a new building, you've got a place to put it, which in Clear Creek County, that's one of the challenges here is that there's only so many shots.
Right, wouldn't that be the demotivation for people that want to buy a house and own it and maybe pass it on to their kids?
Hasn't been in Denver and it hasn't been in several other places in the world that do it. If this is something you guys would be interested in, we haven't really set this as policy because that would have to come to city
Oh, yeah,
council.
yeah, and I'm just curious, but I've never heard of this.
Yeah, we could definitely do a work session about that, and that was something that we have to work with Habitat on anyway, to make sure they're comfortable with the model, but
It's very similar to the mobile home situation, which isn't extremely popular in our town as it is.
it's not quite the same.
It's
but-
very, very
Yeah.
different for the mobile.
Well, no, I mean, I'm just saying that you don't own your land, that your house, that your
But you have 200 years of essentially
Guaranteed,
of
yeah.
use, yeah. And it's not like a land rent, it's like essentially like you own it, you own the appreciation. It's also I think probably the most famous place where it's done is in Hawaii, because a lot of that land is owned by,
oh yeah, Lisa,
yeah, so it's basically.
the
what-
Bishop Estate.
Right.
That's,
Alright.
quite,
Yeah, that
Yeah,
just
that sounds
would
like
be
this is
case
a
by
longer
case
conversation.
Yeah.
decision on each individual piece of property too. And I think a workshop would be good.
Yeah,
Mhm.
well, how much would that percent-wise reduce the cost for building one?
Building the house is the same.
Well, you can't buy the property, so you're taking that cost out of the
But
building.
I just said the build is the same,
Well,
the
but
same
how
amount of
much
money.
would it reduce the cost
Do we not charge them for leasing the land?
to the person that's gonna buy the house? How much would it cost?
So Habitat always sets its mortgage on what the homeowner can afford. So it's a little bit different model. So the cost doesn't really come into what we charge. So if the homeowner can afford 250,000, that's what we charge them. If they can, and then they have like a second that is, goes between the first mortgage amount and the appraised value.
Mhm.
So, and that gets forgiven over a number of years. So if the land, it just makes it easier for us to build. We have less that we have to fundraise.
So that's all. Okay,
Yeah, in
that's
order to
exactly
build
what
it.
I'm getting at.
Yeah, so, typically right now, we're buying land anywhere, oh goodness, 50, 75 a unit, maybe getting some in Evergreen cheaper than that right now.
So would not the cost of the unit be less for the person?
No, we just have to fundraise less, because it's always based on what they can afford.
Again, it's
So
kind
you
of
make
neat,
it-
but how
you
do you choose that process of who is eligible? Because you might have some low income and you might have some higher income people, right?
Right,
Right.
so we go through, there's a whole process that we go through. It's about a 3-month process when we do homeowner selection on that.
Sorry, I
Yeah.
heard that.
No, that's okay. It just seems to me like the village is come out ahead on this.
Well, if we do, it just goes into more affordable housing or nonprofit.
The builders are the affordable housing project, so it's-
Well, You guys picked in the last round in Idaho Springs, some of the residents already had established residency in Idaho Springs and
Right.
longtime residents too. So this
Yeah.
was a program that really benefited the local community on the last round.
Yeah.
And Jared, this
So-
looks like a pretty big building envelope. You got like over 3,300 square feet laid out here with the building 60 by 65, just for example.
Yeah, and that's just kind of, as you referenced, Mayor, that's kind of a building envelope I was trying to play with. If we wanted to go off to one side a little bit into a setback, we'd need a variance. There's also a little bit of drainage there. I tried to avoid where it gets pretty steep, so my numbers might not be 100%, but yeah, it's a good size envelope there. The second one will be a little shorter. It's across the street. There's a area. I'm on page 4. Yep, sure. So across the street, we looked at a site. However, it was deemed unfeasible because not only do the overhead power lines cut through with this 80-foot easement, but there's actually a sewer easement, a 20-foot sewer easement that runs directly through where we were going to look at potentially locating something. So ultimately, that site just wasn't something that would be able to be built on.
Jared, not to split hairs, but Jonathan was just talking about when the sound wall comes in, there may be a redo of the sewer line.
I'm not sure it's that sewer line because this is on the north side of the river, and I think that would be on the south side of the river. So I'm not sure if there's a paralleling sewer line along the
Gotcha.
south side also.
Okay. I got you.
I imagine, and maybe John can correct me if I'm wrong, I imagine that the sewer line that runs through there is probably the interceptor that comes back to that main that's on the south side of the river, is my guess.
Okay,
So I'm not sure that we would get rid of that one.
all right. Yeah, it leaves kind of a long, narrow area south of the sewer line easement.
Yeah, quite narrow, in between that and then the floodplain. Yeah. The third site we looked at was a little bit further to the east. There's currently a few parking spots on it. That would need a little more investigation. It is really narrow by the time you end up. It's funny because on this map, it doesn't look like the grade changes that much, that drastically. And then you drive out there and you're like, wow, yeah, that would be tough. So as I mentioned, a little more investigation might be worthwhile. Otherwise, this is going to be a pretty challenging spot. It would still need a rezoning of the property and a lot of variances, just because you really have to be closer to the street than would be allowed in any of our zoning districts, with the exception downtown. Site number 4, which is mistakenly also labeled site number 3 on page 6, is at the northeast corner of Minor Street and 8th Avenue. This area has some potential. It does have some constraints, though. It's kind of a triangular parcel, the north side of which is historically been used as parking for the residents that face, I believe it's Center Alley. Yeah, that face Center Alley. And so when we went out and took a look at this, there were several cars parked there, and the team that looked at it was cognizant that we may not want to displace all of that parking. So my initial kind of design, which is pretty rough, really showed keeping an alley there that would hopefully connect through to 8th, and then having parking still on that northeast side, and then having a building in the corner. Now, that building, I've got it kind of designed as a duplex right now, is slung under parking, but there could certainly be some other configurations there. But I do think that we could potentially fit a few units in that location. A lot of the sample numbers that I've taken were actually off of Habitat's current designs, and they are about, for their smaller duplexes, they're about 45 by, 25 by 40, I believe. I think I can note that in here. And so I've been trying to get envelopes that at least fit that, because I imagine those are pretty, pretty tight to begin with. So So that's been my kind of baseline for these next few. So, but this would, yeah, it would need some parcel work, but in general, the neighborhood is zoned R1, which is single family, but we could look at rezoning it to an R2 district to allow for duplexes, because we will have multifamily on the south side now, so it's not spot zoning. And a conditional use permit to allow for more than one residence on that property. And then the setbacks can be met with this as well. Number 5 is a very skinny parcel that is located behind the existing host house number 2. We've visited host house number 2 a number of times now because of the renovation that's occurring there and all the really nice work that Spectrum's been doing. And we keep looking at the area behind it saying, wow, it'd be nice to do something there, whether that be more community garden or park or housing. The challenges are, though, that you would definitely need some variances to this because it's only 32 feet wide. Another consideration is that the neighboring homeowners building is pretty much on the property line. So it's not only that whatever would potentially be built would take up a lot of that lot, but it would be exceedingly close to the neighbors.
The Finks don't own that property?
No, there's Scott Levinsky on the next door.
Who does?
Scott Levinsky.
On the west side of 6th?
East of the, so you've got the hose house?
Yeah, and straight to the north. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. So on the east side here. would
Who
be-
did?
Scott, like 2 years ago now, I think.
Yeah, and then somebody bought that other piece to the east of that.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
So there's actually 2 parcels here. There's the main parcel and then there's this other skinny extra little piece that's I think 8 feet wide is all.
Like just south of 600 or between 600 and that piece? Is that
Yep, that skinny little parcel is also city owned.
all we done? Okay.
Yep, so those 2, you put them together and they're still 32-ish feet. I did do kind of a mock-up of if we really got rid of setbacks and did some variances and things, that how it could potentially fit on the site. But once again, it is very tight, and I use that 25 by 40 foot envelope for a duplex. The one advantage to this is the parking would not have to be underneath. There is enough space on the sides that you could put parking, so it allowed for a little bit more livable space.
This is taken off the county map, right?
Yes.
So that line is not always accurate and
Oh, it's definitely not accurate, so I do want to caution all of city council that, it looks like the line is cutting through 606. I don't think that's actually the case. It's how the lines are laid versus the projection of the image. So if the airplane flying the image is over here, it shoots it at a little different angle and just makes it look wrong. So that's a part of that. You're correct. So that site is tight. There would be some neighbor interaction, but there might be some possibilities there as well to consider. And then number 6 is the cemetery. We took a little bit of a look at the cemetery. There does need to be some the land in front of the cemetery, which is down low, does need to be a little bit more feasibility study looked at. One of the main issues there is you've got a number of kind of roads coming in, and then you have power lines up above that do push things back a little further. Initially, when we went out there, it's like, wow, there's quite a bit of space over here. And then and I think initially when I went out there, I didn't look up. And when I went back, it's like, oh, that power line cuts through. Now there's nothing that says we can't work towards undergrounding it or something in the future. But it does still allow for a decent envelope, and I don't have full-blown dimensions on it, but it does look like there could be a few units potentially located down below. And then if you drive up to the south, there's kind of another little area up there that could also be potentially used for, for some units, and then have the parking maybe on the other side of that driveway alley. It would cut off this entrance here, but I don't think that that's a major loss because you do have the entrance to the south and of course the primary entrance to the north. So you'd still have two entrances into the cemetery there. It would take some rezoning because as of right now, it is zoned as a park. When it was annexed, it was zoned for park, which includes cemetery and the allowable uses for that. So there would need to be a little bit more feasibility, but I do think that there might be a couple spots there that could be utilized in the future. And then lastly, we did take a look at the site at the Edgar Mine. The main challenge for this and why it's site number 7 rather than higher on the priority list is that you would have to work with the Edgar Mine on some land swap. And we have some ideas for how that could come to pass, but it would take that extra step of property acquisition there. But there is about an 80-foot by 120-foot area that could be looked at a little closer, and that could either utilize slung under parking, or it might be deep enough yet that you can do some parking in front of the units. So that remains to be seen, and we can draw that out if directed to. But yeah, that's those are the locations that we looked at with Habitat and the mayor and wanted council's input on.
Is it Edgar Mine state owned, the Colorado School Mines, or?
It's owned by Colorado School Mines. Yes, correct.
And I just want to point out at the top of that image, where my finger is, there's several little lot pieces. And then there's a straight line where the road is supposed to be. But obviously in the photo, you can see that the road is not where it was platted. Now I bring that up because it's about 9,000 square feet that the city owns. We own this right here. And all of that is behind the Edgar Mines gate.
We can't get to it anyway.
Well, I'm sure they would like to control what's behind the
Right,
gate.
that's what I mean.
So my suggestion is that we get a swap.
Sure.
And this actually, they have some covered trailers, a couple of them right now that already are encroaching onto our property, that it'd be legitimized and they control everything behind their gate. And we do some type of a swap. I had initially suggested a couple of these first lots in their parking lot. They don't even use, there's dirt in there 2.5 feet high and weeds. They haven't obviously parked on it ever. But as Jared is pointing out, there certainly is the possibility, because they do have quite an expansive parking lot. And they also have the ability to expand upon it because it's flat and it's just dirt without big boulders or heavily treed, all the way up to the building that you see in the photograph.
That right of way is legal easement.
Yeah, that's our property, and as you can see, it's a road to nowhere. Because the historical use is the dirt road that basically curves all completely around it. And then we own these little small lot pieces here. Total is about 9,000 square feet.
With that, are there any questions or thoughts or priorities that we think we should pursue?
Any of these properties have an issue with getting water and sewer service to them?
Most of these are located pretty close to mains, and that was another one of the factors that we did consider in trying to select more low-hanging fruit type of locations. Yeah.
Even the one up by the Edgar Mine, there's water, there's sewer, paved road, $1 million view if you've ever been up there too.
Is it just because of the land swap that this is not the most enticing property? Because this is the most enticing to me.
Yeah.
This and the first one and this one, like,
Yeah,
it seems like a real kind of no-brainer anyway, that we should do this no matter what, right?
yeah. The primary issue why it kind of moved further down on the list was just because of the timing that it would take to.
Sure, like
To have that discussion and maybe the discussion goes well and maybe it doesn't, you know.
right, the feasibility is based on like a lot of variables at this point in time.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a nice site.
And Kate, I'm with you. The first one, I mean, obviously, it's low hanging fruit. We already own it.
Yeah,
There's pretty high density housing over there. I mean, right across the street, you have the Bighorn at 3 stories.
and it's a good neighborhood. I walk through there a lot. I mean, it's very, like it definitely has that kind of building that we're talking about fits into that density. So it's
Yeah.
not like we pop an apartment building into the
Right.
middle of, just single homes.
Do these properties have recent surveys on them? Because
Scott, his
surveys-
property has a recent survey on. I'm just kidding.
Some of these, surveys
Yeah.
are not what they are on the county maps, as I found out on my piece of property.
Yeah, no, that's very true. A lot of them do not. The one close to the Bighorn isn't, I guess I cropped all of that out, but it's not terribly old. It's probably the best one that I have currently. And it does show the easements, et cetera, and I think that's, that's pretty good, sound information there. We do not have a 100% survey for number 4 or 5. That's very true, because 4 is mostly, it's kind of been looked at more as right of way because it was the old rail line, I believe. And so it's just always kind of been city property, and that could use a survey, and it would need some parcel work as well from a surveyor before it could be finalized. Yeah, most of these would take parcel work by a surveyor to ultimately finalize, but no, unfortunately, I don't have quite that detailed amount of information. The cemetery, I guess I would have the annexation survey, which would give us a little more knowledge, a little more information.
Yeah, that's pretty recent too.
Mhm.
Well, that's good to know, Jared, and it would seem like to me, if council is okay with it, probably that one by the Bighorn Apartments would warrant some further investigation and some survey work. That seems to be a very promising one.
Does council have any thoughts on 4 and 5? Those are, ones that I think 4 we could put something on with not a whole lot of headache. 5, on the other hand, is very tight. And so I just was kind of wondering what the council's thoughts were on those 2.
I just want to inject on 5. You're right, it is very narrow. However, and I do appreciate you drawing a building in there, an envelope about 25 by 40. I would suggest even if the building was even narrower, down to 16 feet by 40. That would be 9 more feet, given the sides. Because right now it's down to like 21 or maybe 2 feet or 21 inches or something like that on the one, but that's still, to me, it would seem doable. Even if it was a narrower building, it may not be as roomy, but even 16 by 40 is, we got 640 square feet. And if it were 2 stories, it'd still be 2 reasonable units.
Yeah, and that I think is something where my lack of architectural skills makes it challenging for me to say exactly what the width that could be realistic. So I do think it might be worth engaging in future steps and seeing if that's something that can.
And especially, as you go up Virginia Canyon, and I'm sure some other buildings stick out in folks' minds, we certainly have Victorian buildings that are 16 feet wide, because some of these were actually constructed on 20-foot or 22-foot lots.
What's the next steps and what type of money are we talking about that the city would be spending toward those next steps?
Yeah, so if locations are more or less directed for us to take a further look into, we probably would look at working with Habitat even closer and engaging an architect to start drawing things up. We have involved the city engineer to take a look at some of these from kind of a grading and a water and sewer. And so he has been privy to these conversations, but then we would look towards getting a design professional. What that costs, I don't know at this point in time. It's probably something more that we would have a conversation about, bring somebody out to take a look at it and highlight the ones we think are the most feasible, and then probably getting a price to bring back to council for approval would be my thing.
I would say pursue any and all of them with that without extending a bunch of cost and then coming back to us again, having a workshop of how this would all work.
Scott, I would agree, and I think Kate raises a very good point about what a lease hold would look like.
Mayor, if I may,
Yes.
just throw my 2 cents in.
Yes,
The cemetery, I think that upper portion you should leave for future expansion of the cemetery. Because it is getting fuller as we speak, and there's very few decent plot land areas left.
I think that's,
Thanks, John.
Yeah,
agree.
I think that's a good
agree.
idea.
I agree too. Not that I wouldn't, I'd live by a cemetery, but I'm, and other people might not want to live by the cemetery, if you get my drift.
I do appreciate that. John, I was asking Lou Howard how that four-wheel drive thing started, and she believed that, well, first I asked her if anybody was buried
Up
there.
there.
And it, I don't know, I'm guessing it probably comes down at like about a 16% grade or something. And she believed that people just started like unofficially cutting the corner so they didn't have to go out the way they came.
Right.
And that probably is how we got there.
Yeah,
But
there's
I
nobody
know what you're
buried
saying
there
about
that we know
about it filling up.
of. It is getting much fuller.
And unfortunately, we've never done anything to curtail the traffic. So we've got a drive entrance that literally is like 300 feet across.
It's huge.
John, got a short window to get that taken care of.
Oh, yeah, all right. I was up there one day, there were some four-wheeler, they were offloading their four-wheeler and they were going to just go around the neighborhood or whatever, and they just parked their vehicles there in the Cottonwood because there's this big 300-foot swath of no man's land where you got a road coming down like that unofficial road, and then you have, the official 2-lane nice road that goes up to the cemetery that we've never done anything. I said, like maybe 100 years ago, put up a white picket fence or something just to direct people, like in a 24-foot 2-lane road to go up to the cemetery. Instead, they could just, go like 300 feet over to the south.
Part of the reason that that's so wide down there, excuse me, is the school buses turn around at the bottom.
Mm.
And then, of course, when the rafting started, that's where they turn all their buses around also.
Good. Jonathan?
I just want to say on the community land trust thing, it's a pretty big, one of the reason that it's a really good solution for Idaho Springs, it's a market solution to create affordable housing, which is difficult to come by in our world today.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of things that go into it. It's pretty complex. If we were to select that, we'd have to work with Habitat pretty closely to make that happen. This is also something that the county is considering, creating a land bank that could be used for this purpose with that IHOP grant. I really think it would be worthwhile to maybe have a future work session on what exactly land trusts are and why that's being considered. So we could probably bring something like that too, if you'd like.
That sounds good. I think that would help everybody on council.
Thanks, John.
That's bring the attorney be involved in.
Yeah. It may not work too, but it's something that it can bring costs down in a lot of good ways and make sure that we get second shots. So it's worth consideration, I think.
All right. Kathleen, anything else you think of?
No, we're just excited.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Very
Looking
good.
forward to it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Council, any further questions? All right, I'll move on to the next topic on our work session, which is the public restroom vandalism that never ends. So Kathleen, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And Chief has outlined several things. I also want to thank John Bardoni, a meeting or two ago, telling us about how many times the restroom at Cooper Riley Park has been repainted, and it's only a few years old.
Actually, over the weekend, it was hit again.
Oh,
So
boy.
part of the wall needs to be repainted again.
I say we just close them up.
That was our suggestion completely.
That's mine. Well, why not? I mean, what's the easiest? way to do
Currently,
it?
right now, and Chief could speak on this too, the M&M Park, we closed November 1st till about April 1st. And the reason for that is because of the vandalism.
Sure.
We drive by there in the morning when it's 21 degrees outside and people have propped the doors open. And those little electric heaters will not keep up with that.
No,
And it's frozen the pipes, it's busted the toilets, the sinks, and it's
It-
just horribly expensive to keep.
seems like a no-brainer to me. Why the aggravation?
Well, and they don't get a lot of use in the winter at all. Unfortunately, they get use that I don't think is proper.
Yeah.
There you go.
So, so Chief, do you think it's like just locals that live in homes, or do you think it's unhomed people that are doing this? I mean, obviously through the conversation, people are living in there
It's,
different times.
it's called the 240 in the Greyhound.
The 240?
Yeah,
I don't know what the 240 means.
yeah, it's 240.
Oh, you mean the bus? Yeah,
That's
I
it.
gotcha, yeah.
That's what it is.
That's part of it.
Yeah,
Certainly, there's specific people that we're familiar with. We looked in our record system, one individual been cited 44 times in the last 3 years for damaging restrooms and misuse of property, city property.
and it's a local, an unhomed local, or?
Yes,
What I'm trying to get to is it necessary to have a bathroom so that we don't have human waste on the ground in our neighborhoods?
we're not.
You're gonna
like-
get that anyway.
Right.
Well, yeah.
That's, I guess I would say that's not possible, but what I would say is there are businesses that are open in Idaho Springs, basically 24 hours a day.
Mhm.
That, and then obviously during the day, there's other businesses like Safeway and places that people that go to use the restrooms and
I'm very,
facilities.
very
So,
familiar with it, yes, thanks.
yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is I'm not sure about for us, it's a fair amount of man hours, but really realistically, it's affecting public works more than anybody.
Mhm.
With how much it's costing the city, constantly have to fix these restrooms. And what we're seeing, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure there's still vandalism in the summer. But to me, it seems like it's more of a colder month issue when
Interesting.
people are actually living in
In there.
a restroom. And that's really not obviously what's made for.
No,
There is vandalism in the summer, but there's a lot more people around where you don't have the same opportunity to spend hours and hours and hours in there by yourself.
Right,
And as Chief put in his report too, and I'm sure he's well aware, and I'm sure you're all well aware of the recent libraries that have been
Mhm.
disinfected for millions of dollars
Oh,
because
yeah.
of the drug use in there. And I can guarantee you it's almost on a weekly basis at least that we find syringes. There's been blood squirted all over the walls. The toilets are full of drug paraphernalia, syringes, you name it. Because it's unchecked.
that's gross.
well, I'll tell you, 3 parking tickets in town, something would change, not 44. But we can have drugs and needles and, I mean, at 44 times, is it? Do we give him the bad guy discount at 45? Because I couldn't have 44 parking tickets in this town without my car getting impounded or something.
Facing the judge.
Well, yeah, facing the judge, but somebody else can get charged 44 times for the the same type of behavior, just, close them up.
And I can't speak for,
a health
I
Oh, yeah,
can't speak
yeah.
for the courts, but
I
I think
understand, I
a lot of this
understand
just
that, but
gets
at 44 times of,
released, you just get, basically, you don't even get taken to jail.
yeah, I mean, it's not okay. It's not okay. So,
I'm gonna ask John Bardoni and the chief. We're looking at these three alternatives, and I think that they're all pretty reasonable alternatives that have been laid out there. One is close all restrooms seasonally. The second one is close the restrooms at Macy Ruth Mill and Cooper Riley Park could be fully closed seasonally and keep the Citizens Park restroom open during business hours year round. Or the third one is keep all restrooms open year round. John Bardoni, of those three, what one would you be leaning more towards?
Personally, I'd like to close CRC seasonally and M&M, which M&M we currently do. So I mean, I'd like to continue on that.
All right, that sounds like number two, and keep the Citizens Park open during business hours. Chief,
I
you
would
preferred?
I would concur with that as well, just because of the number of people that are in that area. And if we closed it at, say, 5 o'clock, I know that there's still some people downtown, but I'd say 5 or 6 the latest, because it gets dark. So that's what I would recommend.
And ultimately, it's council's decision, but I just wanted to ask, because I know we do highly regard their opinion. And yeah, I was,
Would you just close at dusk, chief, like so that it varies with the year, like if we have something going on downtown? People are, out more so that it's kind of closing at 7:30?
Certainly, I mean, you have like the tree lighting ceremony, or you have an event.
You guys have it open
Certainly,
anyway,
I would recommend that it be open and available to the public. But in general,
Right.
outside of special events, certainly.
maybe like say it like that on the sign, is that after 5 o'clock, this is only open for special events, or,
Right.
yeah, to let people know why it's closed.
what's the cost of 5 porta potties during a special?
I
event?
actually looked this up today and I couldn't find any of the services
They're
that,
cheap.
well, I know that cheap, I used to have one on my property,
Well,
but
The problem is they're getting hard to get up here.
yeah,
We can't get the ones over here serviced. and,
no,
like,
we
it's a
can't.
huge
It's
issue.
gross.
yeah, and they freeze
Well, the
over.
ones we got aren't exactly awesome.
The bathrooms, though, remember, once they're renovated, they're getting renovated with, I'm gonna call them prison fixtures, just because they're the kind that supposedly are vandal proof,
Sure.
which of course isn't true. But I personally think that one of the things that we could do is we provide free bathrooms to everyone in the city. And I think that that's something that's difficult for us, that costs us a lot of money, taxpayer money.
Yeah.
And we need to think about, there's some ways that we might be able to share that cost more equitably. But those bathrooms at Citizens Park right now do get used pretty heavily. And I think that one thing that we could do is talk to we call it Vitality Task Force right now. It's the Economic Recovery Task Force from 2020, from the pandemic. But we could start talking to the businesses about maybe helping out with some of these things that we've got going on in those bathrooms too. And that's something we could bring up at the next Vitality Task Force if it was something to consider.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of options around Citizens Park for restroom facilities. I mean, I've never gone out of town and drove around looking for a restroom in the park.
Yeah.
I mean, is anybody else?
no, let's go to the store.
There you go.
Wendy's
Five, six,
or,
seven.
There you go.
Yeah.
Go get gas, go use the restroom, whatever. I mean,
I do the same thing.
I don't know why we're obligated to, put up with the nonsense and then have a discussion about it. And it be a burden to our chief and our public works director.
Right.
Right, that's nonsense. You gotta use the restroom or whatever, the facilities, find it, right? I don't know.
Though often you will find restroom facilities at city parks.
Mhm.
Let me ask, council. Would you be all right with closing Macy Ruth Mill Park and Cooper Riley Park seasonally?
Sure.
Yes.
Well, is it gonna be any better though, like when it's warm, people aren't jerks. Don't understand.
Well, like John was saying,
Or we're trying to
it's
keep
worse for
the
us.
transients out of it for the,
Yeah, I hate to put it that way, but yes, unfortunately,
well, I mean,
they're used as warming huts. which
Yeah,
they
they're trying to
absolutely
find
should
warmth
not.
in the winter time.
well, you know what? That's not the city's problem.
That's not what they're intended to do.
There you go.
Right.
Exactly.
And we've had some issues with people walking into the bathrooms with people laying on the floors, sleeping.
Not okay.
No, it's not.
You know,
It's been happening at the post office too, just.
Sure.
FYI.
and unfortunately, you know, we're asking for new officers and hiring bonuses and different things like, you don't have time or anything to go lock it up and, right, especially if you're answering calls for service, it's the last thing on the guy's shift on his mind, that's not, that, I don't know. They
Well, I mean, the
Shouldn't
police help us out a lot, but they can't do that all the time. They have other things to do.
Exactly, that's what I'm
You know,
saying.
they have calls also.
Sure.
They can't do that.
Sure, yeah, it's not their obligation, I don't feel, but
So is council okay with the decision or to make a decision that we close Cooper Riley Park and Ruth Mill Park?
all of them.
I'd say number two. I think
I'd say
because we
all.
have, well, I think the historic district is gonna push back. I mean, it's just my opinion that the businesses down there are gonna push back on people coming in and saying, can I use your bathroom? I mean, it already says on most doors.
Charge them $5.
That's not my business to
I
tell
know
people
it's
what to
not,
do,
but
so.
there's always some solutions.
I mean, you
right?
could put a paid for toilet in Citizens Park too, if you wanted to.
You could, 100%.
I mean, I like the idea of having a courtesy of having the toilets. It's the problem is that they're being used for other stuff.
Right, I agree. I still think that they would be closed at whatever time we can get to them at that point in time. Sorry.
The other thing about Citizens Park, to Chief's point, that there's always people at Citizens Park. There's never not populated and they're never gonna be empty the same way. The other thing is, once they're open again, we could see how that goes, and if it is a problem, we can always close them as well. So that there's nothing to stop us, so.
I'm sorry if I missed it, but is there less vandalism at that site?
Person to ask is John.
There is. There is.
A little less,
Citizens?
a little less
Okay.
with Citizens.
There's some, but it's not as prevalent as the other remote.
And I say that because I think his crew sometimes take care of things and doesn't even call us.
Hmm.
So.
Right.
Gotcha.
When it's
Likely.
serious, then
Yeah,
that's
sure.
a call, but
You get
I
called
think
for
there's
certain
minor,
things, but not everything.
right.
Jared?
I just wanted to also add that there are a number of businesses due to the historic nature of downtown, the retail businesses that don't have restrooms.
That's correct.
Some of them might for staff only use in the back that aren't even present. Now, of course, the restaurants are a different story, but yeah, a lot of the retail spaces do not have facilities for the public.
It's totally understandable, but Tony goes like Port Locks.
I think they're kind of getting over it, by the way, because we had somebody come into the library today and talk to us about it.
Yeah, but
disgusting
they
it was to
can't
go in.
deny it.
I'm just.
I know.
They kind of, I mean, it's a company, they can do whatever they
Well,
want, right?
they,
Isn't that-
well,
isn't
They had
that
theirs
their
true.
closed last week.
but
Hmm?
They had theirs closed like
Right.
all last week.
Because they had stuff going on in there, so.
My thought would be to leave them open for now and have the Public Works give us some type of reporting if vandalism does take place. So that we might,
Do number two, you mean?
yeah,
Pun
number
intended.
2. Yes.
nice work, Dave.
Number 2.
Really.
Art,
Blah.
what would you prefer?
I
No,
know.
but- you know what I mean.
You are.
I'm trying looking for some levity here, but
You know, I mean, I've never gone anywhere expecting, into another town to have a restroom at my disposal, wherever I see fit. I mean,
But I think Jared's point about some of the businesses don't have restaurant rooms.
they
and
might,
that this is
they
a-
might use that
This
one.
is a service for the businesses
Yeah.
downtown. Unfortunately, we're getting riffraffed in there.
Yeah.
If we could, I don't know that there's any way to control that, but
In Europe, yeah.
You pay.
You pay.
you pay.
yes.
I have no
right,
problem with
city
the pay
pays.
toilets, there's
And
places
the
in
city
Colorado you
pays
pay.
for it.
And includes what's this?
Jimmy, I know you're for all of them closed.
Well, that's probably just whatever out of my mouth, but I mean, the reality is what it is.
Would you be for option two?
I would, for sure.
All right,
And I'm totally fine with that. I don't think that this should be a topic of our discussion on the burden of our, department heads on why it's a problem.
I agree.
Like, if there's 44 of them, then that's it. That's enough, right?
I mean, some people play video games.
Well,
Obviously, this
I
guy
know,
likes
but
to
if you
defile
get beat that
bathrooms.
many times, you just quit.
I'm just kidding.
John Curtis, which one of those alternatives do you prefer?
I like one, I mean, I can live with two, but one,
I'm exactly John and Art, so.
Okay,
I'm two.
okay. Jeremy?
Choose by the way of doing and then see how it affects
Yeah.
Citizen Park. I think it's gonna shift some people there.
Could.
And I'd be curious to see how much of an impact it actually
Good point.
it does
True.
by having that shift, and then that gives us documentation to say, okay, now we can. Now we have to go a little further. Right, we can justify why, right? I think the whole point of the downtown business owners don't have public reference, which is true.
Agree.
And we shut it down. I think we need to be able to at least articulate why we have made that decision with some data that we currently don't have, because we know that the vandalism is historically below our house in the park.
When it revert back to one, Jim, when I say I told you
this.
so, I did.
We also look at the same time, just what
But
the
I
cost
feel
of
like
of
if we
paying for
shut
toilets
down-
would be in
If we
Citizens
shut
Park.
that one down, there's some businesses that might come and say, why are you guys shutting this down?
Well, they're 100%.
We
that's
could
what
tell
I
them
think.
why, but
Yeah,
if
Well,
we
they
do it
already
in
know what the
attempt-
elements that's downtown they're concerned too. It's everybody's concern that's downtown. But can we look into just the cost of pay for it?
The challenge with our building is, we've looked at this, and the only reason I know this is we looked at electronic locks for them. too.
Right.
And the way the building is built would make it difficult to control unless we have a attendant all the time. So that's something we'd look into, and I'm sure we could find some solutions and bring it back and like just explore the pros and cons. The other thing that we have talked about is like an impact fee for downtown businesses that don't have toilets, that they could help maybe share in the cost of them. Because we do pay quite a bit of money for, I mean, those are $300,000 bathrooms, so.
Yeah.
I think that there's a fair thing to be said that maybe they should be paying into the system or paying into an attendance even.
Yeah.
So
I also am for two, with the exact reasons that Jeremy just pointed out. Let's see how that goes, because he's exactly right with the shutdown of Cooper Riley Park. That may, force some additional, folks,
Migration.
well, I
yeah,
agree.
yeah.
To change the migration pattern.
Yeah, exactly, that's right. All right, I'd like to move on to our police chief's recruitment bonus that he's outlined. Chief?
Yeah, Mayor, Council. We still have two vacancies. One of the things that we're sort of seeing that other departments are doing are these little bonuses. So what I was proposing is that with these two vacancies, just after the first month within our budget, so basically the end of January, which we're not gonna have two people hired by the end of January, obviously. Though that money could be used potentially to pay a little bonus to a new hire, whether they were already certified or not. If they're already certified, they would still only get the bonus after they finished FTO, their training. And then after they got out probation, they would get the other half. The other thing I could look at is we currently do a 3-year contract with people that go to the academy, which we got the one who's doing fantastic, by the way. We could do maybe a 2-year contract so that the folks don't just leave. It keeps our pay still, the pay scale with people that are the newest, still above a new employee. And I did check with our employees for feedback to make sure that, I'm not rocking the boat too much with our own employees, and they definitely saw a benefit to that. So, I think we've shown that we're fiscally responsible. When I looked at the 2022 end of year budget, we were, I believe, close to 150, a little over $150,000 under budget. So this is a small, just sort of a small token to potentially get some applicants to test with us. So that's what I'm proposing.
Council?
I have no problem with that.
What's a period of time that it would take to go through those two? So the field training officer, what's the period of time for the first 1,000 and then the second 1,000?
So if they had to go to the academy, they wouldn't get anything until they graduated the academy and then completed the FTO process. So now you're looking at, it could be 6-7 months.
Yeah.
If they've already are already certified, then their FTO process is, I believe it's 10 or 12 weeks.
Because I think it's a great idea to give them the bonus. What you don't want is them leaving after
Right.
an 8-month period.
Right.
Say, I got my bonus, now I can move on.
So
They'd have to
Look
pay
at
that
people's
back
record.
though, right,
And
chief?
then if there's a thing that says they have to pay it back if they don't stay for 2 years or
Right.
something like that.
well, there's a potential that if it was after they got off probation, they would actually run us into 2024. So we could potentially be that far as into our budget, but the bottom line is those positions aren't filled, so we would, I wouldn't project us being somehow over budget based on the small amount of money.
And it doesn't look great for people to like leave after 8 months anyway, so I mean, I don't think it's as large enough of a sum to be that kind of motivated, at least in my mind, is that?
Right, that's what I would agree. I
Yeah.
would agree. I don't think someone's gonna just come here for that, right?
John Curtis, are you all right with this?
Tomorrow.
Okay. Jimmy?
Yeah.
Bernard? Okay. All right, Janine. Very good. The last thing on our work agenda is the interim public works director. I am really proud to say every person on council brings something very unique to the table. Whether it's keeping I-70 cleaned up 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, or fire department, or library, or parking structure, or multiple commercial buildings, everybody brings something very interesting to the table. It's a very diverse group, and clearly our only goal is what's best for the city. John Curtis has the unusual qualifications of being a public works director for Georgetown, and prior to that, Morrison. And we are fortunate, I feel, that he is willing to be an interim public works director for us. And this is an opportunity, should council agree, that he could spend the next week or 10 days with John Bardoni before John retires February the 3rd. And I'd like to have a council input on that.
I think that's a nice fit.
Yes,
Very fortunate.
absolutely. I do too. I think we're fortunate to have.
Yeah, he'll be just
Kev.
temporary. I don't mean to make any big sweeping changes or anything like that, so.
Well, we're lucky to have somebody with your experience. You just happen to be on council, but it's really been quite an asset. And I think it's a lot smoother than the alternative.
Yeah, I know all the guys, they do respect me, so.
I think they do too.
First, congrats, John. We're gonna miss him, for sure, man. Is it gonna be will everybody have to apply in our department?
I believe so.
Yeah, we have to post it.
And it's live now, so people can come check it out. I've got it. If they want it, they can email me and I can just send it to them or
Sure.
whatever, so.
So you can appoint someone within or recommend or anything?
Me?
Yeah,
That should be a council decision. to be honest.
or council could. Either.
Council is the one that will make ultimate decision.
Sure, on a new hire from the outside or somebody within. Then can we get your feedback or no?
We have a personnel records that
Look at
John's
John.
written out, so
Look at
we know what he said about his employees.
Okay.
All right, anything
It's gotta
further?
be hard to fill these shoes. but-
Yeah, he casts a pretty good shadow, that guy over there. Oh, boy.
If there isn't anything further, it's 7 o'clock. Normally we do start our regular session at 7, but let's take 5 for a comfort break and we'll reconvene here in about 5 minutes.
I had
It makes sense for you to be down there, but you're gonna be start planning.
But you could have a little retirement gig too, so not retirement, you know. Moving on down. I know you guys are trying to get up here.
Cool.
I tried to.
Yes. Let's do that. Yeah, I planned it. I love No, yeah. Oh. Helicopter.
Yeah, helicopter. Well, she's not going anywhere for a while. It works. She's gonna. What did I call it?
Gas.
Yeah.
Gas. Yeah. Dave really. Works like Maddie.
You like good? We still putting up line.
Yeah, I got the new one. No, probably. So, it's good. I'll show it to you.
So without that, Scott, there's nothing, right?
Right, there's nothing in life that's happening. You don't have that. I remember,
I told these guys. I was ready to go back to work doing something.
What's that? 40 years old. Yeah, she had cancer and died a year later. Yeah. That's all. Went up there. That's a search warrant. Like it was. So I was up on Montana.
I did. No, I.
That was kind of fascinating. Yeah, they see
In the Caribbean?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be fun?
That's what you just, that's we. Probably
Yeah.
I don't think I claimed it. Then they go check down when they talk about it. Interactive. Yeah. No one has to.
Why your people still?
She's glazed off. I think everyone's gone. I don't think there's people up there, but. I'm not 100% sure, but.
Like I said, I haven't seen that too many around town.
Especially like knock on wood. I haven't. But like I said, I mean. I always just. It's like everybody in the morning, and I'm just like waiting to see like the camp, like somebody
Oh, my pleasure. In fact, I still got a bunch of sticky refrigerator finished. Yeah, that's.
Didn't touch it.
Mother Supreme.
Yeah.
My light headlights. So I pulled into that parking lot and there's an old beat up pickup truck with all of these stuff around it.
Evening. How's it going? Well, how are you? Good. Is this your last meeting? Yeah. This code. Yeah. Oh, it's helpful.
Oh, yes, agenda, yeah.
John, I know that you're.
You always look fine. I'll just put it right here.
Yeah, well,
Sure.
if I could get your feedback.
But,
If you don't mind.
Sounds good.
Got a new email program, so you don't have to try to go.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea, 'cause that's the only thing I really need attention. Because otherwise we gotta go back and figure out.
Well, it makes me dizzy.
I get dizzy, like spinning that thing like a Price is Right.
Yeah.
Or Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe they were doing that.
yes,
Or he said,
yeah,
you know, as soon as possible.
Okay, the one thing I know, because he's out right now, so it might be easier to do it next time, but if not, then you're gonna check.
Okay. Well, yeah, he just said, double check.
Let's see if I can figure out that.
Yeah, thanks. She was 91.
You're trying to do higher. That's what I thought. We gotta get-
She had a good ride.
That's what I thought. Don't worry about it. See if I can figure it out. The other stuff.
I actually didn't think this was gonna take her, honestly. She's tough, she was tough as nails. But I think she got to understand.
I wanna get a, they don't really know what, have you ever seen that?
And with a stroke, you always have to have that.
Oh, my God, you got two of them, dude.
Son?
Yeah, he's got her. He's got her.
Driving.
I figured that's better.
My husband's grandma died at 104 and she stopped driving at 103. She stopped working for the church at 101, still had a garden when she passed away.
Jonathan, are we ready?
No rush.
Who was it?
Hello, I'd like to welcome everybody to the January 23rd, 2023 regular session, Idaho Springs City Council. We'll call it to order at 7:07. And first thing is roll call, please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Here.
Kate Collier.
Here.
Art Cacavelli.
Here.
Scott Pennell.
Here.
Jim Clark.
Here.
John Curtis.
Here.
Jeremy Jones.
Here.
Thank you.
All rise, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. And we have an agenda before us. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the agenda for January 23rd, 2023 meeting.
Thank you, Scott. Do I have a second?
Second.
And a second, any discussion? All right, all those in favor, please raise your right hand and signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Does anyone tonight feel they have a conflict of interest? Yes,
On the Public Works,
thank you. John Curtis will be recusing himself on the Public Works discussion, and we have, does anyone else have a conflict of interest tonight? All right, hearing nothing further, I will move on to approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the minutes from January 9th, 2023.
Thank you. And a second?
a second.
And a second from Art. Any discussion of the minutes?
I'm just not gonna vote, Chuck, because I wasn't here for the last meeting.
Thank you, Kate. Understandable. All those in favor, please raise your right hand and signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we will move to the bills to January 23rd, 2023. Do I have a motion?
I have moved to approve the bills to January 23, 2023.
Thank you, Art. And do I have a second?
Second.
A second from John Curtis. Any discussion of the bills?
Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to point council's attention to page 3, where the water bills for city facilities are.
Thank you, Jonathan. The 41,000 and change.
Yes, sir, 52,006,001. Staff knows there may be an anomaly there, and we're investigating. Of course, this is an internal accounting thing here, so we'll bring an update and a correction to council if we see that there's a problem, but we did notice that that was not normal.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. Any further questions about the bills? All right, roll call, please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Yes.
Kate Collier. Art Cacavelli.
Yes.
Scott Pennell,
Yes.
Jim Clark,
Yes.
John Curtis,
Yes.
Jeremy Jones.
Yes.
Kate Collier.
I wasn't gonna vote on that either, because it was something that came from the last 2 weeks. I wasn't really paying attention.
All right. Do we have any public comment tonight?
Nobody has signed up in the lobby, Mayor.
Okay. Then we will move on to the liquor license authority. We'll put our liquor licensing hats on and we will reconvene at 7:10 on this hearing. And this is a continuation of a public hearing on an application to modify the current liquor license premises known as Two Brothers Deli at 1424 and 1428 Minor Street. We originally opened this hearing on January the 9th and accepted evidence and testimony when we decided to continue the hearing until this evening to allow the applicant and staff to consider and discuss options. Tonight, we'll be opening the hearing again and accept additional evidence and testimony on the proposed modification. I now open the hearing on the application from Valdez Brothers LLC doing business as Two Brothers Deli to modify its beer and wine license located at 1424 and 1428 Minor Street. First, we need to address any counselors present tonight who were not present on January 9th. And I know we have two, Kate and Jimmy, to feel. I want to see if you have questions that need to be addressed, or if you've been able to catch up or watch the January 9th meeting.
I watched the meeting and I reached out to Jonathan and he was
Okay.
helpful. So I
All
feel
right.
like I'm up to date. And then it sounds like there's been some rehashing in the last couple of weeks.
Okay, and that was the important thing, just to see if you were comfortable with voting on this particular item
Sure, after the presentation. I
tonight.
think I'll be
Jimmy?
okay.
Well, it's the place right next door to Two Brothers, yes, where Mr. Stiles had
Yeah.
his little shop there. Okay, that was my own question.
Yes,
But you were able to watch the first part of the hearing?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, we're gonna have to ask you to recuse yourself. if you
Okay.
weren't able to watch.
What for? What am I missing?
well, because you weren't here for the first half of the presentation and the evidence that was presented. We just need to make sure that everybody's up to speed.
Was there a conflict on the location or what?
Well, it's kind of convoluted, Jimmy, to be honest.
I'll get it later. I don't need to take the time up. So, all right, I'll just refuse. That's fine.
It's
No problem.
the safe thing, the safe course of action right now tonight.
That's what I want then.
All right, thanks.
All right, perfect.
All right, next, I note that we have additional new evidence in our packets, January 19th memo from the city attorney's office and a 1424 Minor Street premises control plan from the applicant. All of this is part of the record, and I hope that all of council has had a chance to review it. And I would ask the applicant if they have any updated testimony to give tonight.
I don't think so. It's summarized here. If there are any questions, we're happy to address it further.
Okay, all right, we'll see. If there are questions, and there very well may be, would ask you to come up and be sworn in, all right? And staff, is there anything you would like to present tonight?
Mr. Mayor, I'll just say that we took council's direction and conferred with the applicant. And the memo and packet summarizes the efforts that were undertaken. And the premises control plan is something that we as staff reviewed with the applicant. And we found between the applicant and staff, we found that to be agreeable. That's not to say that a council member could not vote no tonight. That's a perfectly legally defensible option, but we found the agreement that we reached was legally permissible and agreed upon between the two parties.
All right, not to editorialize, but was what we were hoping for when we decided to give it 2 more weeks. So thank you. Is there any public testimony tonight? Hearing none. Are there any further questions for staff or for the applicant from council?
I guess I got one.
Yes. Lindsay, if you would, please come up and be sworn in.
Yeah, it's not really for her, it's more for our attorney, but in the future, can they apply for a common consumption area? Would require them to generate basically a board, and they requires reporting on an annual basis to the city, but it would probably fit with their long-term business plan would be.
This is an option that we presented to the applicant, and ultimately was not something that they wanted to undertake, and would also be procedurally, there would be a lot of hurdles, and we as staff didn't really look too deep into this, but right now we're not sure if they definitely could or couldn't, but it was something that was offered as an option and was rejected.
Sorry, before we go through the formality of swearing anybody in, does anyone have any additional questions for the applicant? I apologize for jumping the gun, please.
I do have one
Oh,
comment.
yes,
So
we'll
if you
swear
want-
you in.
Sure.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Lindsay Valdez, 1424 Minor Street, Idaho Springs.
Do you swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Yeah, so again, thank you, Mayor and Council, and I just want to commend the staff for keeping that door open for dialogue with us and going above and beyond for having that discussion. I just wanted to address the common consumption area. That would be something that is ideally our goal, and we would like to pursue that. I think we probably misunderstood the initial what was presented to us in thinking that it was an area where no alcohol could be consumed. Not a common consumption area, but just a space for people that did not include alcohol. So I think we had that misunderstanding, but just for the record, I mean, down the road, yes, that's something we would love to pursue, but for now, I think we've come to a reasonable agreement with the swinging doors and signage and communication with our customers to really have a great business partnership and maintaining all the rules within both of our businesses.
And let me ask, for the door, for example, if we have a motion to conditionally approve this tonight, what do you feel would be a reasonable deadline for getting the door in?
I don't think he's been sworn in, but he's the one constructing the wall, so I'd like him to
I see, please.
comment on that.
Yes, please.
He's building the wall.
Name and address for the record, please.
Kent Slaymaker, 2036 Virginia Street, Idaho Springs.
All right, do you swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
If we got a conditional approval on the wall and door being built, I mean, a week and a half would certainly, or 2 weeks would certainly be plenty of time. We plan on having it done by the end of this week. Things happen, so.
So to be safe, could I say February 7th?
Sure,
Okay,
that would be just fine.
all right. All right, and any final statements?
I don't think so. I'll just mention also that in the last 2 weeks, we have made the final move of any bookstore items and inventory over to 1424. So 1428 is 100% vacant and ready for Slaymaker sellers. So we've really separated those two spaces.
All right, before I close the hearing, staff, anything additional? Council?
I have a question for staff.
Yeah.
This is a tricky, and it's a little confusing, but right now there's a swinging door. Customers can pass through it if they don't purchase alcohol, right?
Yes, and the door is going to be constructed to go back to a shut position, And it will be,
Swinging door.
yeah, and locked.
It's a buffer to keep alcohol from one business to pass to the other business.
Yeah,
One
and
liquor
also,
license really, right? Isn't that ultimately what you're trying to
So-
do?
Sorry.
It's not to overlap your liquor licenses, isn't that? So, yeah,
So-
it makes more sense.
And there to enforce that. It's my understanding that you can purchase alcohol and remove it from an establishment if it's sealed, is that correct? Like a cork bottle of wine or,
yes,
so if they didn't open it, they bought it from one establishment, if they went through the front door and come back in the front door of the other one, would that be a legal way to?
well, I think generally, and I think the applicant would be more able to answer this, but I believe that you wouldn't be allowing that person into your business, correct? Or is that?
I mean, if legally they're allowed to be in the business, then yes, but if it's going through, so I guess if they left, and again, I recognize the gray area here, if they leave with a closed bottle of alcohol and come into our business, I guess, no, they would not be able to consume that because it wasn't purchased in our business.
But that's,
They can't
were you
consume it.
asking that? Are you asking, are they allowed in the business?
Either or, but
Or
it's
yes,
just,
we would
it's
allow
a
them in the
very,
business, just
Right.
not to
I
consume.
mean,
the
I
alcohol.
see it as a enforcement thing for your employees that have to
Yes.
be trained real well on how to manage this.
But doesn't that already happen downtown with Tommy Knockers selling 6 packs of beer? I
Sure.
mean, to
In
me,
fact, it
it's,
currently happens with our
Sure.
business right now. I have a pretty clear answer to, you're right, that is a tricky question. Pardon me. Our license, Slim Maker Seller's license, and again, we're just talking about our modification of premise tonight, but since you asked, our current license that we currently operate under at our current location allows us to serve on premise, so you drink it there at glass, but
Right?
also just closed bottle like a wine store. And
Yes.
we operate as both.
Okay.
We do not recork for people to leave, so if they bought a bottle to consume, and that's just policy, it's not really a thing we do, we are technically allowed to, but we just don't really do that, it never hadn't really come up. I doubt we would in this case, and if it was a point of contention, we certainly wouldn't. But as far as they just purchased a closed bottle like you would from any wine shop, they can go anywhere they want with that at that point. In fact, in our current situation, it would be no different than if they did that today. They bought a bottle from our shop a block away and then had it in their bag and walked into Two Brothers. It's the same thing, really. And vice versa, if you're still selling closed for off premise. But I don't know how long that'll last.
To me, that would be a legal consumption in her business, and then it's up to the business owner whether or not they allow someone to bring in an alcohol. It's just that there's a lot of variables here, and I just want to make sure that you guys would be clear on what's allowed, what's not allowed.
They certainly can't open it. I mean, you can never bring it in and open it. That's not allowed no matter what, really.
Well, there's
Completely
restaurants that
regardless
allow
of
you to bring your own wine in.
yeah, but the different liquor license specifically, it's I forget what it's called, but you have that, I don't know how it goes, but does the wine, it doesn't matter. They specifically have a different liquor license for that allotment.
I would just say I misunderstood the original question, and I agree with Mr. Slaymaker that it would be like buying a bottle of wine
And taking it.
anywhere and
Going shopping.
Going shopping, yeah.
But there's restaurants that allow you to bring your own in to consume your own wine. Is that a different liquor license like she's saying?
Yes,
That's a total different liquor
I
license.
don't believe that the deli's license as it exists.
We don't
So-
have.
Yeah, we
any-
don't allow that.
There's no.
No intention of it.
So I know that the two of you would probably be fairly clear on everything, but your employees will be there at times when you're not there. And that's gonna be the hard thing to make sure that everything's communicated, what's allowed and what's not allowed, because it's a little
Yeah.
tricky here.
Yeah, and we did include in our premises control plan, we always have a manager on duty, whether our manager or assistant manager. Our manager lives on premises as well in an apartment. And so he's always accessible. And we only have 5, unfortunately, only have 5 employees. We'd love to have more. And so we don't foresee any issues in training our employees because we're in such close contact with them all the time and letting them know what's going on.
And then it says there's signage, so I'm sure that the signage will be somewhat clear to the customers what's allowed and not
Yes.
allowed in plain language. In a language that's not confusing to them.
Yeah, we worded it as no open alcohol beyond this point.
If you want, this is an example. Yeah.
This is currently what we have on our patio because of that same thing. People can buy a bottle of wine and leave with it, of course, but not with open alcohol.
But I mean, there's signage between the two businesses so that they can't pass.
Yeah, there will be signage on both sides
Yeah,
that say
that's-
no open alcohol.
I think that's
past
the
this point.
main concern
Yeah,
of not overstepping the law.
exactly.
All right, any further discussion before I close the hearing? All right, hearing none, I will call the hearing to close at 7:25. I just want to thank staff and the applicant for going the extra mile where we can come to some agreement that works for everybody. I am going to make the motion that we approve the application for modification of premises for Valdez Brothers LLC doing business as Two Brothers Deli, 1424 Minor Street, Idaho Springs, Colorado, 80452, with the condition that there is a deadline to complete the physical modification, as we have discussed tonight, that we set for February the 7th. Failure to meet the deadline renders the approval null void without any necessary further action by council. 1428 Minor Street, removed under this approval, may not be occupied and used for any new purpose until this condition is satisfied and that the modifications have been done and verified.
Mayor, if I may
Yes.
ask a question, just for clarification, so 1428, so our liquor license is still in place in both buildings until February 7th, correct? Until the wall is constructed?
Right.
Okay, yeah, because it'll be difficult until that wall is constructed, it'll be more difficult
Yeah.
to, okay.
Yes, that's correct.
All right. That is the motion with the condition. And do I have a second? And a second from Jeremy? Any further discussion?
Who's gonna inspect it? Who's gonna do the inspection after the work's completed?
John's a good question. Who in the city, Jared, you will have left us by then. I assume that would fall on Jonathan Kane.
Yes. Yeah. Or if you're comfortable with an offering of proof from the applicant and.
Pictures or something.
Yeah,
We can,
Right.
we can discuss that, and it's no problem for me to come down there.
Otherwise, fine.
It'll be done in a timely fashion by a representative of the city, probably Jonathan Kane.
And then I would say, a question after that, it's up to the state authority to make sure liquor laws are followed. It's not the city. City doesn't go in and inspect after that, right?
Well, are you saying,
To
as
make
far as,
regular inspections, or I know the state does sting type operations to make sure people are in compliance with liquor laws, and the city doesn't have an agency that does that, so.
nothing precludes city staff from checking in on the licensed premises and making sure that the control plan is followed and, you know, having a hearing such as this to revoke the license if.
Ultimately, it's a humongous deal if your license is revoked.
Yeah.
Huge deal. I mean, so one infraction can be the end of your business. So I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt on this one.
Any, oh, yes.
I can speak that the state is also currently just investigating and checking out the stuff, so they're in the know. They know what we know. They're in cahoots with it. Not, I don't know if cahoots is the right term, but they were ready to be okay with the wall as long as it's local authority.
Thank you, Warner. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Tuck Harmon.
Yes.
Kate Collier.
Yes.
Art Cacavelli.
Yes.
Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Jim Clark.
Recuse.
John Curtis.
Yes.
Jeremy Jones.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, applicants. Appreciate you going the extra mile and coming in tonight as well.
Thank you again for keeping the door open for that dialogue. We really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
All right, next up is finance officer.
She is not in attendance tonight, Mayor.
Oh, okay, all right, well, thank you.
I can answer any questions if you guys do have one about bills or.
All right, because we do have the December 2022 financials in our packet. Well, Lorraine is not with us tonight. I'm going to move on. If there's no finance questions at this point. We don't have resolutions tonight, nor any first readings. City attorney, anything further?
Nope.
All right. And with city administrator, we have 3 requests for action. The first one, as John Curtis had indicated, he'll be recusing himself from.
When we go out.
John, I think that would be appropriate. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm sure you come back, mister.
Yeah.
This does concern me.
John, if you would shut that door on your way out, I'll ask for somebody to grab you here in a minute.
Oh, she's gonna ask for you, you're in trouble. I'm busted. Like bailiff.
All right. I would like to make the motion that we approve hiring John Curtis as the interim public works director of effective January 24, 2023, to allow overlap before John Bardoni's last day on February 3rd. This will be temporary part-time assignment at $45 an hour, which represents the hourly rate of the base of the approved salary range for the position. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I'm happy there were multiple seconds.
Yeah.
And any discussion?
Well, my question is, we're not, when we say part-time, I mean, as needed, we're not gonna say you can only do 10 hours a week. I mean,
No, you're exactly right. And it's probably going to be in the 20 to 30 hour range.
I'm sure.
And that doesn't
How's it
serve
going,
as
John?
a conflict of interest with Mr. Curtis being on council and holding that, no?
So we actually had asked Carmen about that.
Okay.
And, he would recuse himself when there's anything where it's like his personal gain, for
Kinda like me
example.
with bills.
Right, like
Yeah.
his salary or something
that's
like
cool.
that, So,
Just didn't want to see John get.
yeah, so we intend on not having a conflict.
Cool.
Yeah, and just to add, that's correct. And, if there was ever a close call, it's something that our office would look into. And
So if he makes a request for action, can he vote on a request for action?
As long as it doesn't benefit him.
No, there's no personal benefit there.
Right,
That's just
yeah.
city business.
Just
Like
stuff.
we all
Okay.
vote on all the time.
Salary,
anyway.
yeah.
Sure.
And I assume he's willing to take on this role until however long it takes, or is there?
Scott, that's a really good question. I want you to know, I am very pleased to say we pointed to folks who we were trying to get to be in charge of the sewer plant, for example. It was like a year later, we end up promoting from within.
Yeah.
And we only brought that up because obviously we can't get anybody before John Bardoni retires. But even with the professional headhunting agency, there's no guarantee that, we'll get somebody in 6 months here.
Sure.
So we hope, but you gotta have somebody qualified. I don't doubt, because the pay range is decent, that we'll get a bunch of applicants, but will we get somebody with, for example, John Bardoni's experience? That's gonna be the real question.
So he could be there for a year.
Well,
I mean,
we're just looking at recent history,
sure.
I swear, the job postings the county has up right now, or Gilpin County, they have changed very little in 6, 7, 8 months. It's almost
still
like that,
open.
right? Same answer.
Still open.
Yeah. So Scott, a long-winded answer to your question, he gets it.
Cool.
This should bridge the gap too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
What I hate to see us do is John retires. And we spend 6-7 months looking for a replacement. And we spend 6 or 7 months post replacement hire. Trying to figure out what's going on. Meanwhile, he's trying to travel and we're calling with ridiculous questions. Because we would-
He'll just shut his phone
Yeah.
off, Jeremy.
I know.
That, bud.
But this bridges that gap between non-direct operations.
I agree with that.
Where those could just be directed right to John Harris, and, you know, there's gonna be, you know, pretty solid.
Make that transition.
and you know, might I say, it's pretty darn convenient. He lives right here, right in the middle of town. So,
Absolutely. Welcome to being on call, mister.
any further discussion? All right, roll call, please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Yes.
Kate Collier.
Yes.
Art Cacavelli.
Yes.
Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Jim Clark.
Yes.
Jeremy Jones.
Thank you, chief.
All right. Then.
You're arrested now, buddy. Yep, put the cuffs
I'm in
on.
big trouble now.
Yeah.
Up against the wall, please.
Yeah.
John, thank you for stepping out. It was unanimous, and welcome aboard.
We saved you from getting arrested. The chief was gonna.
So we have you starting tomorrow if you're able.
Okay.
And you know, I feel better.
You go on call at midnight, mister. Answer your phone.
We thought we'd start you tonight, but
Yeah.
Buddy.
And that starts at midnight, 12:01.
Congrats.
But anyways, I feel better that there's some time to spend with John Mardoni before he retires.
Need to catch up on stuff.
Good job. Congrats, man.
The second thing goes without saying, very unfortunately, Jared will be leaving us for the fine city of Littleton. And it is a fine city. My sister lives there. I go there quite a bit, but this motion is for a 10% pay bump because frankly, somebody's going to have to fill Jared's shoes. And that's quite a hot topic and it's not easy. So.
Thanks a lot, Jared.
Yeah.
Thanks for leaving us.
I would like to make a motion that we approve a temporary 10% pay increase for Jonathan Kane while he serves as interim community development planner effective January 27, 2023. In addition to his existing duties as assistant city administrator, the city will also retain the services of a professional planning consultant as may be needed for certain matters. And for folks who remember, this is what we did the last time we had a vacancy with Tony.
Are we gonna use the same company?
I can't say that for sure.
Okay.
But we will retain some, but Kate, if I could expand, it would be better, in my opinion, if we used the same outfit only because they have familiarity with our location.
Okay.
And at least one individual did a good job. The other one was more controversial.
Okay.
I'll second.
Thank you, Jimmy. I was just going to ask for that. And any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Yes.
Kate Collier.
Yes.
Art Cacavelli.
yes.
Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Jim Clark.
Yes.
John Curtis.
Yes.
Jeremy Jones.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Finally, do I have a motion for the third item regarding the proposal from HDR Engineering?
Sorry, go ahead, Scott.
I'll move to approve a proposal from HDR Engineering, Inc. in the amount of $199,429 to complete topographic survey and to develop alternatives and a preferred concept for Minor Street between 14th and 17th Avenues, which meets the city goals as described in the Idaho Springs downtown plan by creating flexible use open street. This proposal includes public outreach and public meetings in partnership with Studio Seed, the consultant that created the downtown plan, account number 59-70-5108.
Thank you, Scott. Do I have a second?
Well, second.
Jeremy, second. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Yes.
Kate Collier.
Yes.
Art Cacavelli.
Yes.
Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Jim Clark.
Yes.
John Curtis.
Yes.
Jeremy Jones.
Well, thank you, Assistant City Administrator, nothing further tonight?
No, sir.
Okay. Deputy City Clerk, nothing?
No request for action.
All right, very good. And Jared, do you, anything further tonight?
No, just to say thank you all, so very much for providing me with this opportunity to get to know this wonderful city better. And yeah, I'll be up in here from time to time, so.
Jared, you just beat me to the punch. I was gonna thank you for fine service. And I guess there may be a possibility to join the Historic Preservation Review Board, if that's something that time allows in the future.
And that's my hope. I do need to check into other meeting schedules, but I would be very interested.
Well, I can't thank you enough for your fine work.
We wish you the best.
Yeah,
Thanks,
we
sir.
do. Yeah, absolutely. Chief, anything further tonight?
No.
I did have a question. I've actually heard this from a couple of folks. If you're able to answer, is that poor gentleman, I believe from Central City, about 45 years old, that flipped over in the vehicle there right by Safeway. Do we know anything further as far as like his condition? Did he survive?
He's not well.
He did survive, but he's still in critical condition. There's, I guess I would just say there's medical issues that we believe were really the.
And I did see critical condition in your report. I just didn't know if you had any, had heard anything, in the last day or two that didn't make
From what I
the.
understand, he's still not.
Okay.
He's really good friends with one of my guys.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Oh, good, Jimmy. I'm glad you have some
Yeah.
inside information there, but not good.
No, he's not well.
All right. Well, thank you.
Unfortunately,
All right. Well, thank you very much for that update. I know several folks had inquired. And well, we certainly wish them the best. John Bardoni, anything further?
Mayor and council, you have my final staff report.
Man.
Can we stick
So-
like a drive in your head and so we can get all the information out, put that on our computers, because
Seems
Take
like
a lot of
it's been a
stuff.
short 12 years, and it's been fun, but
I want to remind everybody, this will be John's final council meeting. And of course, February 3rd, there is a party from 5 to 7. And hope to see you there. I'm sure it'll be a good one. It'll be at the Visitor Center. And John, can't thank you enough. Many years of great service to the city. I know you'd put off your retirement in the past, and it's just been great having you. And I can tell you, it's interesting. You have been so well respected from every council person. You've just never been political. You tell people the way it is, whether we want to hear it or not. And you're just a fine man. I hate to see you go, but
you're gonna make me cry.
yeah, we'll be living vicariously through some of your trips.
there you
I
go.
think, yeah.
I remember John
Thanks.
Cena and then 12 years here in the city, So congrats, John.
Yeah,
Appreciate
really.
For sure.
Thank you so much. All right. I don't have anything tonight, other than to say, we're saying farewell to just a couple really, really fine folks. And we're gonna go a few weeks without a council meeting. As you can see here, we do not have a work session nor a regular session until February the 13th. But like I said, hope to see everybody February 3rd for John Bardoni's party over there at the Visitor Center, 5 to 7. Anything further before call tonight?
I'd like to let everyone aware that Bob Bolin is willing to bring forth some more history lessons.
Oh,
but he
excellent.
didn't have one ready for tonight, so.
Excellent. Thank you, Scott. We look forward to that in the future.
Absolutely, yeah, I missed one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was a good one.
Yeah.
Anything further? All right, hearing nothing, we'll call her adjourned at 7:44.